April 1945. The deep, suffocating woods of Thuringia. The war in Europe is screaming toward its end, but in this specific corner of Germany, the air feels like it belongs to another century. General George S. Patton, Jr. descends the stairs into a damp, lightless basement. The sound of his polished boots hitting the wet concrete echoes like a judge's gavel. This isn't a place for strategy. It's a place where the human soul goes to die. In the center of the room, under the yellow flicker of a single light bulb, sits a man. He is an officer of the Gestapo, the Third Reich's secret police. His name is irrelevant because, to Patton, he represents a plague. He sits with a chilling, needle-sharp composure. His uniform is crisp, his posture perfect. He looks at Patton not as a conqueror, but as a temporary nuisance. He is a man who believes that because he knows where the bodies are buried, he can buy his way out of the noose. On the table between them lies the centerpiece of this nightmare, a leather-bound album. It's thick, heavy, with silver corners that catch the dim light. Patton doesn't rush. He slowly pulls out a chair, the screech of wood against stone cutting through the silence like a blade. He opens the first page. What he sees isn't just a record of war. It is a curated gallery of sadism. Page after page of American paratroopers from the 82nd and 101st Airborne, captured, bound, and methodically broken before being executed. This officer didn't just oversee these murders. He photographed them with the pride of a collector. He documented the light fading from their eyes. We are going to dive into a story that was scrubbed from the official military journals. A story of what happens when a general who believes in the ancient laws of chivalry meets a monster who believes in nothing. This is the day Patton decided that the Geneva Convention didn't apply to demons. The Gestapo officer begins to speak. His English is flawless. Delivered with a soft, academic tone, he speaks of interrogation protocols and the necessity of maintaining order against insurgents. This is the definition of arrogance. He actually believes he is explaining a rational process to an equal. Patton remains silent, his eyes fixed on a photograph of a young corporal from Ohio. In the photo, the corporal is kneeling in the snow, his hands tied with barbed wire. The next photo shows the Gestapo officer himself standing behind the boy, a Luger pressed to the base of the skull. The officer in the photo is smiling. "You see, General," the Nazi says through a thin smirk, "war is a series of difficult decisions. I am a bureaucrat of reality. These men were spies. According to our laws, they forfeited their right to mercy. I merely documented the conclusion of their legal status." This was more than just a lie. It was a violation of everything Patton stood for. To Patton, a soldier's life was sacred. To this man, it was a data point in a leather book. The scorn in the officer's voice was unmistakable. He looked at Patton's ivory-handled revolvers and saw a relic of the past. He thought Patton was a cowboy who would eventually follow the rules, hand him over to the JAG Corps, and let the lawyers handle the rest. "I have names, Patton," the Nazi continued. "I have the locations of safe houses, the names of high-ranking officials who want to defect. I am far too valuable to be treated like a common criminal. I expect a comfortable room and a fair hearing in Frankfurt." Patton finally looks up. His eyes are not burning with fire. They are as cold and dead as a winter grave. He doesn't say a word. Instead, he reaches out and touches the silver dog tag of the corporal from Ohio, which the Nazi had pinned to the inside of the album cover as a macabre souvenir. Before we go further, I want you to think about this. If you were standing in that basement, holding the proof of your own men's torture, and the killer was mocking you with valuable information. Would you play by the rules? Or would you do what the law couldn't? Tell me in the comments. Justice or protocol? The atmosphere in the room shifts. It's no longer heavy. It's electric. Patton's cold fury is a physical force. He slowly stands up, towering over the seated officer. He doesn't scream. He doesn't throw a punch. Instead, he begins to peel off his leather gloves, finger by finger. The slow, rhythmic creak of the leather is the only sound in the room. You think you're a historian? Patton whispers. You think these photos are your legacy? No. These photos are my men, and you are a maggot who has crawled onto their memory. Patton turns to his two guards, battle-hardened sergeants who had fought from the beaches of Normandy to the forests of Germany. They had seen the photos. Their knuckles were white from gripping their M1 Garands. Take the album, Patton commands. Carefully remove every single photograph. I want the names and the faces preserved. These images will go to their mothers, so they know their sons died as warriors, not as items in a Nazi's book. He then grabs the empty, hollowed-out leather cover of the album. He tosses it into the lap of the Gestapo officer. This is your life now, Patton says. An empty shell. No names, no history, no value. The Nazi's smirk finally falters. For the first time, a flicker of doubt crosses his eyes. He looks at the empty leather in his lap, then at the stone-cold face of the general. Take him outside, Patton orders, to the birches at the edge of the property, and bring a shovel, a heavy one. The backyard of the headquarters is quiet and haunting. Wind moves through the birch trees, their white bark scarred by shrapnel. Beneath them are fresh mounds of Thuringian earth. This is where the items from the album were discarded. Patton walks to the largest mound as the guards drag the Gestapo officer through the mud. His composure is gone, replaced by frantic protests about the Geneva Convention. Patton points to the shovel leaning against a tree. One sergeant picks it up. Do you see that shovel? Patton asks. It's a good American tool. My soldiers will use it to bury their brothers properly and build a monument to the men you tried to erase. Then Patton leans in. But you don't get a tool. You called yourself a bureaucrat of reality. Here is your reality. He forces the Nazi to his knees in the cold dirt. Start digging, he growls. Use your hands. The same clean hands that held the camera. Feel every stone, every pound of earth you threw over these boys. The Nazi refuses, screams, and tries to stand. Patton drives his mud-caked boot onto the back of the officer's neck and forces his face into the dirt. Dig, Patton repeats, or I bury you alive right here, and no one will ever find your name. For 4 hours, Patton doesn't move. He stands like a statue of vengeance as the sun sets. The Gestapo officer becomes a whimpering wreck, fingernails torn, hands bleeding, covered in the same earth he used to hide his crimes. He exhumes the bodies, washes them with bucket water, and moves them to new graves prepared by the American soldiers. This wasn't just punishment. It was an exorcism. Patton made him face every man he killed and touch the cold skin of the heroes he mocked. When the last American soldier is laid beneath a makeshift wooden cross, Patton looks at the broken creature at his feet. I'm finished here, Patton says. This thing isn't a prisoner. It's not an officer. It's waste. I don't want it in my camp tomorrow morning. I don't want it in any paperwork. As far as the United States Army is concerned, he never existed. Patton walks to his jeep and drives away. He doesn't look back as the sergeants step forward into the shadows. He doesn't need to hear the end of the story. The next morning, the report simply stated, one Gestapo official deceased during attempt to evade capture. No details. No mention of the album. No mention of the birch trees. Washington would have hated this. The politicians would have called it a war crime. But to the men of the Third Army, it was the only thing that kept them sane. They knew that as long as old blood and guts was in charge, their lives meant something. He was the only man willing to get his own hands dirty to ensure that evil didn't get a fair hearing after committing the unthinkable. Patton believed that you couldn't defeat an ideology like Nazism with just bullets. You had to destroy its soul. You had to show the supermen that they were nothing more than cowards when the light was stripped away. This incident in Thuringia became a shadow legacy. It's why Gestapo units fled in terror when they heard Patton's tanks were within 20 miles. They knew he wouldn't bring a lawyer. He would bring a reckoning. Was Patton right? Did he preserve the honor of his men by breaking the rules of war? Or did he lose a piece of his own humanity that day in the woods? If you were one of those sergeants, standing there in the dark after the general drove away, what would you have done? Would you have followed the manual, or would you have finished what Patton started? Let's talk about it in the comments. This is a part of history that isn't for the faint of heart, but it's the truth of how the war was won. I'm Mike, and this was War POV. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories from the edge of the front line. Until next time, remember the fallen.